Sigue en sintonía de nuestra programación.
Ahora empieza su programa, el show del doctor Roy Aranda. Temas sobre los efectos que tiene la separación de los niños de sus padres, traumas que afrontan los indocumentados, violencia doméstica, el porqué de la violencia en las escuelas. Llámanos en vivo al 1-888-900-2811, extensión 6, y haz tus preguntas al aire. ¡Comenzamos!
Hola, ¿qué tal? Buenas noches, queridos televidentes del famosísimo show Tribuna TV. Good evening, my viewers from the famous Tribuna TV show. Today is February 13th. Hoy día es febrero 13. No se me escapa que mañana es el famoso día San Valentín. Tomorrow is St. Valentine's Day, February 14th. So we do have a very, I think, an important, interesting, even though sad show, un programa muy importante, a la vez triste por lo que está pasando en el mundo, porque el tema hoy, the theme for today, really pertains to coping from natural disasters. Se trata de los desastres que están ocurriendo recientemente. El nombre del show hoy, tenemos invitadas, pueden ver aquí, tengo la famosísima doctora Dinelia Rosa y la famosísima amiga nuestra Marisol Velez. Irma, son boricuas las dos. Yo soy boricua por inyección. I'm Puerto Rican by injection, both of them are Puerto Rican. My wife, who is also Puerto Rican, is here. Her name is Irma. Irma, say hello. We're going to make you famous. Okay, so Irma's forever famous now on TV. El show hoy día, the show today is called Resilience in the Face of Nature's Fury. Coping with natural disasters. The point of using the term resilience is one of trying to help the viewers who are traumatized not only by natural disasters, but there are many other things that happen in life. Next week, we're going to have a show that deals with coping with violence. So, of course, many people are traumatized by that, and the reactions, to some extent, are similar, but, of course, the reason for the source of trauma is different. But resilience is something that I wanted really to emphasize, how important it is really coping with it and growing and developing and getting over it and becoming somehow stronger for it. En español, el show hoy día se intitula Resiliencia frente a la furia de la naturaleza, hacer frente a los desastres naturales. So, lo que quería hacer, para empezar, como hemos hecho, as we've done before, I wanted to share with you the inspiration for the show. So, Don Oscar, también si quiere saludar a los televidentes. Oscar is part of our group. Oscar parte del equipo, ya es un miembro. Oscar, por favor, slide one, please. I want to share with the viewers what my motivation was in doing this show today. Inspiration for the show, my wife Irma, who's Puerto Rican, and I introduced you to her. I've traveled to Puerto Rico many times, and I fell in love with the island. So being Boricua por inyección works well for me. Irma used to tell me I'm Boricua por inyección. That's where I got it. Sadly, I've seen the devastation caused by Hurricane Hugo. This is like years ago, 1989. Irma's mother lost a house in Vieques, and she and other family members were there in Vieques during the storm, and they had to try to huddle and protect themselves, and they witnessed firsthand the devastation right there. And then, of course, the horrific devastation that nearly leveled Puerto Rico in 2017, the Category 5 hurricanes back-to-back, Irma and Maria, September 6 and September 20, that damaged the island, the infrastructure, and Puerto Rico is still recovering. And you know that just sadly a couple of days ago they discovered all of these supplies that were in hiding in some storehouse. Since December 28, however, now we have this new onslaught of devastating earthquakes that began December 28th. There's been easily 500 or more every day. Marisol, tú dices que hay cada día más terremotos. Every day hay terremotos, right?
Todos los días.
¿Tú sabes cuántos hoy, por casualidad?
Hoy fueron como 13.
Okay, so 13, Dinelia, just today. So there was a 6.4 magnitude earthquake that hit the island on January 7th. My understanding is that was the biggest one. Left the island without power, damage, destroyed hundreds of homes, buildings, thousands of people were homeless. They were left in, living in shelters or in tents. Tú me dijiste que Guánica está como abandonado.
Está completamente desalojado.
Right, the town Guánica is completely deserted. It's like a ghost town. So many were left homeless, and I put the names of the towns: Yauco, Pañuelas, Guánica, Guayanilla, y Ponce. They were living in refugee centers and tents. The damage as of that time had already surpassed $3 billion, so I'm sure it's way higher by now. We had a magnitude 5 earthquake on February 4th, 2020. February 8th, there were several earthquakes, and by the time I was preparing the slides for this show, on February 9th, there were 10 earthquakes on February 9th. So needless to say, I've been very, very deeply touched by these events, the loss to an island. And I continue to worry very much about it, and I'm dedicating the show to Los Boricuas and everybody who loves Puerto Rico, everybody who has family there, friends there, colleagues, associates, patients, anybody who has anything to do with the island Puerto Rico. Oscar, ¿me puede quitar slide 1 y ponme slide 2? The show today, we have a show that's going to cover quite a number of things. We're going to talk about the many kinds of natural disasters people experience, how they are affected emotionally, what kinds of treatments are available to them, the types of interventions that are available at different stages, what happens before the crisis, what happens during the crisis, what happens immediately after the crisis, and then after cleanup, and even years later. You have some sort of recovery efforts and ongoing treatment efforts, because post-traumatic stress disorder that I'm going to ask Dr. Dinelia Rosa to talk a little bit more about, and we've talked about PTSD in the past, is something that doesn't go away. It stays with you, can come up and down, and you have memories and recollections. All of a sudden, you're feeling as if it's going all over again. We're going to focus on risk management. What does risk management mean? So I'm hoping that the viewers can learn some of these strategies and techniques for themselves, because we're subjected to all sorts of things that are taking place, and I'll show you some photos that I have in mind. Also, as I've done before, resources, recommendations, references for viewers in English and Spanish, including wonderful 16-page landslide guides for Puerto Rico. Okay, so this is something that I want you to be aware of. We're going to start with, let's talk about what are some of the major, most typical kinds of disasters. Por favor, Oscar, slide 3. So earthquakes at the top. I put that at the top, obviously, because, my big concern about what's happening in Puerto Rico. Wildfires, California, Australia, flooding in Oregon, other parts of the Midwest, hurricanes, tornadoes, blizzards, cyclones, monsoons, heat waves, tsunamis, y Dinelia, tú habías agregado algo.
Mudslides.
Mudslides, los derrames de lodo that take away houses, and, well, if it's at night and all the water comes down, and, can actually kill people. So, lo que quería hacer, what I wanted to do now is actually to introduce our guests. So, vamos a empezar. Puedes sacar a slide. I wanted to welcome my good friend, colega. I met you at New York State Psychological Association.
That's right.
We were at a council meeting, and I was sitting a couple of seats to your right, and you were raising your hand, and you were making all of these commentaries, and you sounded, wow, this girl is so sharp with the commentaries. I don't know if you remember, but I approached you afterwards and introduced myself because I was so impressed with what you were saying. But that was my first exposure to Dr. Dinelia and Rosa. You were a council member, council rep at the time. I think it might have been DCRE, I don't recall. It might have been something with diversity. But then you became a superstar. You actually ended up becoming the first Hispanic female president of Nurse State Psychological Association, and I became the second Hispanic and probably the first male Hispanic president of New York State Psychological Association. So we became good friends, and she was kind enough to present many times at conferences that I've been organizing and so forth, and she travels all over the place. So just briefly, Dinelia, well, she's a psychologist by profession, trained at the Journer Institute of Adelphi University. She is, as I mentioned, a past president of the New York State Psychological Association, and she's held many leadership roles, and even now you have your chair, I think, 2 committees at least.
Yes, at the New York State Psychological Association, that's correct.
She's also a past president of the New York Association of Hispanic Mental Health Professionals that I inherited a couple of years after you. Very, very involved with the American Psychological Association, and in fact, most recently, and congratulations.
Thank you.
She was appointed to the APA Commission on Accreditation. So this is basically, why don't you just say what it is? So tú lo vas a decir mejor que yo. Something to do with accrediting programs.
Yes, so APA has a commission that oversees the different PhD programs throughout the nation, internship programs and postdoctoral programs. And it's a group like of 36 people from all nationwide, and they receive the reviews every time a program has to go through certain years to be reviewed to make sure that the students are learning what they are expected to learn. So the programs get accredited. If they lose the accreditation, it's something that doesn't look too good because students want to go to programs that are accredited and they have a good reputation of the standards and teaching. So we receive those reviews and we go through them, and then we
So putting it in simple
together.
terms for the viewers, it's like a quality assurance process.
Correct.
You want to make sure that the Purdue chicken that you buy really is Purdue. You want to make sure that the psychologist you're seeing is really adequately trained and complied with program
absolutely.
requirements. And at the very beginning of it, you want to make sure that the programs actually are qualified to provide the instruction that they're attached
Absolutely.
to provide. So
Absolutely.
that's at the front end. You're also a professor at Teachers College, right?
Yes, that's the most rewarding part of what I do.
Maybe you can just briefly
I've
mention
been directing, for the last 20 years, I've been the director of the training clinic at Teachers College, Columbia University, that receives students from 5 different programs. And basically, they're trained there. They see clients before they're ready to go out to the community.
And Teachers College is in Manhattan.
And it's in Manhattan, and I teach in the clinical psychology program as well.
Okay. So, gracias. I'm so glad
Placer,
you're here.
placer,
She's been
placer.
promising to do this for
Yes,
like almost a
yes.
year. I lost track. Aquí tenemos a la famosísima amiga nuestra, good friend, Marisol Velez. And she is a beloved friend, una amiga querida de Irma y mía. She's a homemaker. She's ama del hogar. She bosses everybody around in her house. Daughter to a widowed father. Y tu papi él está en Yauco, ¿verdad?
Sí,
Vamos a hablar de eso. She's a wife, a mother, sister to 2 brothers and 5 sisters. 5 of her siblings are in Puerto Rico right now, living through this earthquake nightmare. She's an aunt, a great aunt, a grandmother, And aside from all of that, she's like a sweetheart. I mean, she's compassionate, caring, giving person, and she always offers me a cup of coffee, and it's usually Boricua style, which I'm very happy about. So, Marisol, ¿alguna quieres saludar a los televidentes?
Sí, hola, soy Marisol, yo soy puertorriqueña y soy del área sur, toda mi familia está viviendo allá en el área sur. Y ellos están pasando lo peor, están perdiendo sus casas, están viviendo ahora mismo bajo carpa y están psicológicamente mal, están en depresión, en ansiedad y
most of her family, who's from the southern part of Puerto Rico, that's been in really the line of the earthquakes, have been exposed to the damages of earthquakes. Many of her family members have lost property, homes. They're walking around with symptoms of depression, anxiety, and of course this is one of the things that we'll be talking about. But I really wanted viewers to see firsthand the experiences of like a person who's a homemaker, a mom at home, and is experiencing the trauma caused by this. It could happen to anybody who's a viewer when you have a hurricane or a tornado or blizzards and you're left without electricity, you're left without a home. These kinds of disasters and tragedies happen often enough to people that are, that are impacted, and they're left depressed and anxious and not knowing what to do. And so this show is really to try to help you see that you're not alone, and that there are resources, and we're going to talk about some of those things and what we can do to reach out for you, and things that you can do to reach out for not only yourselves and others that might be affected, but other people around you who you know are in harm's way or have suffered. Oscar, por favor, slide 4. Was there anything else that you wanted to add?
No.
¿Alguna otra cosa que tú querías agregar?
Sí, pues mi familia que han perdido la casa, ellos solamente tienen con lo que salieron de las casas, que tuvieron que salir corriendo de la casa. No los dejan sacar ropa ni nada, no tienen nada.
Her family had to evacuate at a moment's notice, just taking whatever was on their backs, running out of the house.
Sí, no los dejan
to
entrar.
Survive. They have nothing. They have no resources.
No los dejan entrar a las casas a sacar nada porque
they can't go back.
Está muy peligrosa las casas.
Okay. We're talking December 28th, so it's pushing, it's getting close to 2 months.
Y algunos niños todavía no han podido comenzar las escuelas.
Los niños pues están sin escuela, ahora que en esta semana creo que van a empezar a hacerle carpas para poderle dar las clases para que no pierdan el curso del año.
They have to make arrangements to provide some sort of a tutorial service or busing or something to help.
Or makeshift schools, so that they could go to that place and because the structures of the buildings of the schools are not in.
It's not just schools, hospitals, other government
churches.
Buildings. There's been a lot of damage, and again, keep in mind, we're talking about multiple earthquakes, not just one earthquake, multiple earthquakes over an island that was already close to decimated by Category 5 hurricanes just in September of 2017.
One
so
after the other.
We're really saying, one thing after another. It's really very, 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 very sad. Slide 4. I wanted to point out that although we're focusing primarily on the earthquakes, the top photo is photo of the fire in California. We're decimated. I can't begin to tell you how many acres and acres of areas that were completely burned and destroyed. The one in the central one is fire from Australia. I'm sure that those of you You've certainly been following the news. You know that it's incredible. What's happened in Australia, the size, the loss, the size that's been affected is incredible.
The animals that have died.
You see a little kangaroo there in the front, and I was so sad. I didn't want to put a photo up of koala bears, but there's been a huge loss of the koala bears, and that's very sad. Beneath the bottom picture, Oregon had a tremendous amount of flooding. That's the one photo that you see there just to show you. Okay, so puedes sacar el slide. Let's look at the next slide. These are actually photos that were taken. ¿Quién sacó estas fotos?
Una de mis hermanas.
These are photos taken. Sí, en el slide 5. These are photos that were taken by one of Marisol's sisters, actually in Puerto Rico, destroyed by the earthquake. ¿Era el uno que ocurrió en enero?
Sí, ese fue el del 6 de enero.
Okay, January 6th, this was the size 5 earthquake, right?
Ese fue el primero, el más fuerte que sucedió.
Marisol, ¿y en qué pueblo?
En el pueblo de Yauco.
So here are the photos.
Uno de los pueblos más afectados.
So, mirando esto, ¿cómo tú te sientes? Looking at these pictures, how do you feel?
Muy mal,
You have to keep in mind that Marisol is here. She's here on the mainland U.S. She lives in Long Island. She's here. And her family, much of her family is in Puerto Rico. And she's planning to go there next Tuesday to see how they're doing. But she's here and obviously very affected by here. So, te afectó, me imagino, bastante.
Sí, me ha afectado mucho porque es mi gente, son gente que yo desde pequeña los conozco y todos somos como familia y han perdido todo, completamente todo.
And your papi is there in Yauco.
Entonces mi papá ahora en marzo 15 cumple 91 años.
Wow, God bless.
Y quiero...
To be 91 years old and to have that happen to you when you're 91 years old, how horrible can that be, huh? I wanted to show the viewers a video clip. It's short. It's only maybe about 3 minutes. ¿Me puede poner el video, por favor, Oscar? This is a video clip that was taken by the niece of Marisol's father's neighbor. So she's 60-year-old, una señora
como
de más
68 por ahí años.
And this is her niece.
Happened the last couple of days. My auntie, the one that lost her house, asked me to take pictures. And there's one important thing that she wanted to show. It's a Puerto Rican saying, Dios bendiga nuestro hogar. May the God bless our home. She lost everything, and I will share that. She has nothing. I went inside, and it's heartbreaking. But I'm doing this in her honor because she's deserving of it. She wants closure. And she wants to have pictures for what the beginnings were and all the wonderful times that we had together. It's just amazing what changes can transform your life. They're heartbreaking. They're heartbreaking. I will try to interview her for her to give a couple of words. Let's see. Titi, unas palabritas para lo que usted siente. Pues, esta es mi tía que perdió todo. Para que ustedes le digan, bueno, para que ella exprese lo que siente. Pues, ¿qué puedo decir? Está bien, Titi. Pérdida. Tener en Dios que me ayude para poder hacer otra vez. Y lo va a hacer. Dios es bueno. Dios es bueno. Vamos a sobresalir de esto. Y le doy gracias al Señor que me puso en esta posición, Padre Santo. y ayudarla. Esto no es mi propósito, es el propósito de Dios. Por favor, bendigan a mi tía Arenía y a mi tío Helio. Y le doy gracias. Gracias porque somos parte todos unidos. Todos unidos. Y por favor, esta bella dama, ella fue la que perdió todo. I will share some of the Facebook, some of the videos of the house because she needs closure. And right now we're working on closure and the better things. Thank you for sharing with me this unique time. And it's not about crying. She's lost a lot. Just keep her in your prayers. Keep us in your prayers. And thank you, my friends. Blessings.
Wow. So, me da lágrimas, you know, like it puts tears in my eyes. The niece is saying she's paying homage to God for being good. They're very religious, and everything that I've always seen about the small island of Puerto Rico is the amazing resilience, the bounce back ability of the people. We're not giving up. We're coming back. We're going to rebuild. We're going to rebuild. We're going to fix.
Two things come to mind from people in Puerto Rico, which is the sense of collective orientation, which is, you know, to be together when there's a crisis. The vecinos se unen, los familiares se unen, everybody
Strong
gets together
community.
to help each other, and that's very strong. And the other component that I think is very strong also is the spirituality and the faith on something above. No matter what religion, no matter, you know, what the religion that they follow, but there's a sense that somebody above us is stronger than us and is going to help us to get out of this.
Well, it's good. I mean, it's good to have, you know, we always, as professionals, we always look for coping factors and things that when we're working with our patients, what are some of the things that they can take away that would be coping patterns for them? With my Hispanic patients, not just necessarily, you know, Boricuas, but many of my Hispanos, they have a faith, they have a religion, and I'm always encouraging them, as a professional, when I see them, I'm always encouraging them to continue to do that and to find some strength in it, and they do, because otherwise it adds to the depression, and they just feel isolated, completely hopeless, and abandoned. And when you feel abandoned and have a sense of hopeless, that's where worries for me kick in about the possibility of thinking that, gee, maybe it's not worth living this life any longer. And that's why I have serious worries about the integrity of their going forward and not doing anything to hurt themselves. Right. And I know that you've had some experience with that because you've led some committee on that or something that you're involved in.
Yes, and you know, when there is a crisis like this, the first reaction of the person is to deal with the here and now, right, with the concrete aspects of the crisis. Like, lo primero que se hace es pensar en qué voy a hacer ahora, a dónde voy a correr, a dónde voy a buscar refugio, where I'm going to find that refuge
to survival mode.
To survive, right. So at that moment, our emotions are kind of disconnected. Desconectamos nuestras emociones porque tenemos que hacer algo más activo. After that, once you are like in a safe place, then you start feeling.
Reality sets in.
You start
It's like a delayed
feeling
reaction.
and saying, "Oh, wait a minute, what happened here?" And at the beginning, it could be a sense of being in shock, right? Es como un shock que uno está como uno no lo cree lo que está pasando. Y luego, then comes other emotional reactions that we're going to be talking about.
Well, I mean, I can relate to that on a personal level. As a young teenager, I was in a very serious car accident, and I had my girlfriend next to me. And when I looked over at her, she had blood coming. Her whole face was drenched in blood, and I thought that she had died. She didn't, and I went into survival mode. And the police came, ambulance. I was amazed that the ambulance actually told me to follow. I followed them in this destroyed car to the hospital, and I did everything I had to do, called her family, and everything was, you know, I was strong and resilient and so forth. And then all of a sudden it hit me when her parents were there, and when the immediacy of the crisis was over and she was getting stitched up and she was okay. All of a sudden, that's when I broke down and started crying. That's when the emotion.
That's very typical.
When the emotion hit me. Let's look at some of the emotional reactions,
Yes.
and I know that you, as a professional psychologist, we're going to distinguish emotional reactions that are actually something of greater significance. That forms maybe something that possibly it's a diagnosis or possibly to keep an eye on it, as opposed to symptoms. That the symptoms themselves keep an eye on them, but they tend to leave. So, por favor, Oscar, slide 6. These are formal emotional disorders. You're going to find these in the diagnostic, in the cookbook that we use, the diagnostic cookbook that we use. But they're actual formal disorders. Not everybody pursuant or following a trauma will get something, although I would say that probably your post-traumatic stress disorder at the top, possibility of depression kicking in, and certainly phobias and panic, I say those probably head the top of things that you would see following a severe catastrophe like the hurricane or the earthquakes. Adjustment disorders are a little bit less severe, but they can last and last and last. TBI is traumatic brain injury. That's when somebody may have had an object hit the head, or they fell and hit their head, or some reason they had a collision, or there was some insult to the head that affected the brain. Sadly, also, we see substance use disorders. People may tend to over-medicate to cut down on pain. So you'll see an increase in opioids. They may also be self-medicating to try to control the anxiety, so there'll be increased use of alcohol, marijuana, other kinds of recreational drugs to help cope with the anxiety.
So I would like to establish a distinction between...
Puedes sacar the slide, okay?
Between normal psychological symptoms that are typical of situations like this and having a psychological disorder. So when you go through a situation of such a significant loss, you lose everything, there has to be an emotional reaction. There has to be a sense of shock, a sense of denial. You get confused. You can think well. Your process of making decisions might get impaired because you are so overwhelmed with what's happening. You could get angry. You could get irritable. There could be anxiety, fears. Right now in Puerto Rico, because it's frequently happening, there's fears.
People don't want to go back to their home. They don't want to go
back, and they're thinking, when is the next one? When is the next one? So it's this anticipatory anxiety, right? There could be a sense of withdrawing from other people. Like, either they look for support from others, but there are other people that tend to isolate themselves. Isolated. They isolate themselves. And then there's a sense of sadness because of the loss, and the loss could be at many levels. Of course, the material loss is significant. Like if your father is in the 90s and to lose everything that he has built through the years and find himself that he has nothing, it's a huge sense of loss. And that brings a sense of grief and mourning.
And it's not always the financial value of it. It's what it represents to you. This is 30 years of my life.
Exactly, or more. There's excessive fears or worries, and if you're feeling any of those symptoms, I want to let you know that it's normal. It's normal. What becomes problematic is if it persists for a long time, if it stays, if no matter how much stability you try to find, you still feel some of those symptoms, then it's something that you might want to look into.
When it prolongs. That becomes a red flag.
Yes.
And that's for the viewers to be aware of.
Absolutely.
You have to monitor yourself. If you are the primary caretaker,
correct.
You have to monitor yourself. You're the one that's rendering the support to others. That doesn't mean you're not affected. I shared with you how I was affected in a car accident. Of course, I wasn't a psychologist back then, but I'm always monitoring myself when I experience these kinds of traumas. You have to keep an eye on yourself, and of course, you have to be aware of the symptoms for others. I've also seen, I don't know how often you pick it up, but I've also seen for some people a minimization, a dramatic minimization. It's no big deal. Pues no tanto. It's like they're encapsulating themselves and putting themselves in a bubble to protect themselves from being overwhelmed.
Well, and also we as human beings, we have different defense mechanisms to deal with adversities, with deal with unexpected situations. The body automatically will react in a certain way. What you're describing could be seen or interpreted as a denial, right? Which is a defense mechanism to deal with it. So when you minimize something, it's a sense of saying, okay, I'm fine. It's okay. We'll move on.
It didn't happen to me.
It didn't happen.
Maybe it happened to you, but not to me.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at some of the symptoms. Por favor, Oscar, el número 7, slide 7. These are some typical, we're going to look at symptoms for adults, and we're going to look at some typical symptoms for the children. Intrusive thoughts means that you have a recollection of it over and over and over again. Flashbacks, you see images of the earthquake or the car crash, whatever it was that you experienced, and you're sort of reliving it or seeing it. It doesn't have to be just visual. It can be that you hear a crash, you hear the noise. You may smell something, the burning sensation. So it's your sense. It's visual, but it's not limited to visual. Nightmares, bad dreams, they don't have to necessarily be of the event. They can be all of a sudden you're falling over a cliff. All of a sudden you're having a dream of a loved one who passed away and is visiting you in the dream. Mm-hmm. So there are different kinds of symbolisms in the dreams that will show you that it's got something to do with your reaction to the traumatic event. Physical reactions whenever you're reminded of the event, you go near something. People who are in car accidents often, if they see something on the road or they see another accident or they see something on TV, they're reminded of it, they have a physical reaction.
Bringing this to the situation in Puerto Rico, the fact that there are so many frequent earthquakes increases that sense of flashbacks and nightmares. People are not sleeping well because they're saying, when is the next one? Estoy diciendo que muchas personas no duermen bien porque como están ocurriendo tantos uno detrás del otro, está la sensación de ¿qué va a pasar si me duele, si me acuesto a dormir?
You don't want to be asleep.
Right.
You want to be awake just in
Absolutely.
case. After 9/11, I had one of my patients following 9/11. She used to go on the subway train and she would put her sneakers on and sit next to the door of the train just in case something happened. She's got her running shoes on and she's by the door anticipating. She had that anticipatory reaction to the airplanes going over.
Exactly.
So that's another example. We have problems of getting startled. I think that makes sense to everybody. You get startled when you hear noises or you have the recollections, loud sounds. Sometimes you feel guilty. You think that, I didn't do enough. I should have done something else. Why me, not them? Why them, not me? Feelings of guilt are fairly typical. Depression. Tú dices que tus hermanos, ellos están sintiendo nerviosos.
Sí, ellos están nerviosos.
Depresión también.
Tienen depresión, ansiedad.
¿Te han contado si tienen pesadillas?
Sí,
¿Han dicho algo de eso?
Sí, no duermen, ellos duermen dentro de los autos.
They're sleeping in cars.
Sí, incluso tengo una de mis hermanas que ella está cogiendo quimioterapia por cáncer en el seno. Y usted sabe que la quimioterapia cuando la dan, la persona queda de cama y ella ahí durmiendo ahí incómoda y todo en los autos por el miedo que tiene.
One of her sisters who's sick and on medication is uncomfortably sleeping in a car because she's afraid.
Del miedo que tienen a que se queden dormidos y que venga algo más fuerte y
And this is an everyday thing, just for the viewers to know. This is like every day. We're not seeing breaks here. Por favor, slide 8, something else that you needed to add to that?
Yes, I was going to add that sometimes there's disruptions even in the eating pattern. The same way there's disruptions in the sleeping pattern. Dificultades para dormir, pero también dificultades para comer. Pierden el apetito. O hay personas que cuando están muy ansiosas le da con comer más. Entonces ya eso es una interrupción en el patrón normal.
La fiebre de comer, the anxiety.
The anxiety. And then also people become irritable, right? They have less tolerance to deal with certain things because all the energy,
angry,
all the energy
temper.
is going to the main presenting problem. So the energies to deal with something else are either short or gone. So hay mucha irritabilidad porque la persona toda la energía la está utilizando para lo que está pasando aquí, entonces tienen menos tolerancia para bregar con otros problemas.
Sí, tengo una de mis hermanas, cada vez que tiemblan, que sea suave, los nervios les acudió el estómago y entra a devolver.
One of her sisters, no matter what happens, there's like even a light tremor or an aftershock, she's basically throwing up.
Throwing up, having a physiological reaction.
Sí, entonces, y otra de ellas está tratando de hacérsela fuerte para darle más soporte a los demás y ella me dice, María, ya yo no aguanto más.
Another one who's assuming more of the leadership role, and she's telling her sister Marisol that, I can't cope with this anymore. Like she's basically taking on the problems of the others to try to be strong for them, and it's affecting her.
I want to add that in situations of crisis, we tend to exhibit the roles that we have played in our family. So when there's a crisis, there's always a doer. One member of the family that takes that role of taking the action, seeing where we're going to sleep tonight, doing the connections, going to wherever they're giving resources and food, and will take care of that. And then this member,
nurturing parenting.
Them nurturing, and then this family member that will absorb all the emotions and will be expressed physiologically. So hay diferentes roles que uno juega en nuestra familia en situaciones de crisis. Está la persona que es muy fuerte y es la que hace todas las gestiones. Me imagino yo que la sobrina que salió en el video es ese tipo de persona. Ella está colectando información, está colectando videos para ponerlos en Facebook. Y entonces hay miembros de familia que absorben todas las emociones y comienzan a sentir muchos más síntomas en el cuerpo, porque en la familia es la persona que absorbe lo emocional. The danger is that people that tend to have that active role, they're putting their feelings aside, right? Because they're the doers. And at some point it will hit them.
Right, that's when they get the delayed reaction.
Yes, absolutely.
So let's look at children. Slide 8. I just wanted parents of viewers to be aware that their children also are affected. Children are not little adults. Children have their symptoms, and some of the symptoms are a function of chronological age, so that what you might see in a 5-year-old would be different than what you would see in a 15-year-old. So you just can't assume that children are like little adults who have the same thing, and it's whatever applies to the adults, it's the same thing with the children. That's not accurate. Separation anxiety, they're afraid to leave the parent. They're like attached to the hip, basically. El nene, the little child, was glued to the mother following some sort of an incident. Regression means that all of a sudden they're going as if they were younger chronologically. A child who, say, was toilet trained and independent and able to, to do his or her needs, now all of a sudden, may want to have the light on in the bathroom or be accompanied to the bathroom, or the play will show signs of more infantile kinds of behavior.
And in worse instances of regression, they're children that lose their speech for a while. Right, what we call elective mutism, because of the trauma, they were able to talk and they were very articulate, and after the trauma, they lose the ability to talk.
We have fear of the dark, fear of sleeping alone, behavioral changes. Child may become withdrawn, as you were saying, but on the other hand, the child may become behaviorally more aggressive.
Yes.
So you can see behavioral acting out as well as a disinhibition and just becoming very placid. School phobia, well, that's really an inaccurate term, but not wanting to go back to school, not wanting to go to school. For some children, they're afraid that something bad will happen to the parents. So
I connect that with the separation anxiety, right? So they become so attached to so concerned that something might happen that they don't want to separate physically from the parents, and that affects them wanting to go or not going to school.
Anuresis, they're actually, children that have been toilet trained, all of a sudden they're making on themselves. Physical complaints, I got a stomach ache. I see that very often. The stomach aches, the headaches, something hurts. It's usually more of a vague kind of symptom, and that's how you know that it's really emotional. And the changes in school performance that I said as well. We have, for the viewers, we have several slides that are going to focus really more for an educational kind of a component that I want to give you a little bit of the thread of the impact of a disaster, starting from the beginning to a more advanced stage. So we're going to be going through some of these slides a little bit more quickly. I did want to share with all the viewers that the show is actually being recorded right now, live, on YouTube. It'll be available immediately after the show on YouTube. You just go to youtube.com, type in El Show del Dr. Roy Aranda, or put Roy Aranda Show or something. You should be able to see it. By tomorrow, it's going to be recorded on La Tribuna TV's website, Facebook, and it's also archived in Vimeo. So there's going to be several sources. I invite all viewers who want to, feel free to go back to it, look at it, share it. You can take screenshots of the slides that you can print and save them, look over later for you, take photos of them. It's all here. The purpose of this is really to help all of you. Slide el número 9, por favor. So a lot of this stems from my expertise and many years of doing crisis work, crisis management. The impact of a disaster, anticipatory means exposure to the buildup. When you're watching the news and they're telling you that a hurricane is approaching where you live, and it's now a Category 3, we're anticipating that by the time it hits landfall, it's going to be 150 mile per hour wind. Everybody is advised to evacuate, and they show you photos of the wind, of the houses being blown apart, the flooding. This is what I mean by the anticipatory. The buildup, the exposure, the media exposure, the visual displays. And of course, some evacuations that are voluntary, others that are mandatory. Beneath that, actually during the event, if you are there, you are in the path. Possibly you're in the path of harm or destruction. You're going to be hearing the sounds, as Irma's mother and family did when exposed to Hurricane Hugo. Y como tu papi estaba escuchando, hearing the noise of the houses crashing, the sounds, the visual impact, seeing it. When you saw that video, watching the destruction, going out and seeing this devastation, the breakage around you, the loss of amenities, if you are injured, loss of life in the most extreme severe cases, and other kinds of losses, like loss of, we went dark for a while, so that's another loss. Okay, so slide 10. Oh, it's a computer. Okay. Yeah. That's a computer glitch. Yeah. It's always good to blame something other than yourself. I'm being facetious. I'm joking. All righty. So, slide 10.
No puedo.
No puedo.
Está reiniciando la computadora.
Oh, okay.
Sí,
are you able to do it?
So, so maybe we could talk about the aftermath, or you want to?
Yeah, no, I can mention it, and cuando lo tengas, ponlo. Aftermath would be the loss of amenities. You don't have electricity. You don't have water. You don't have food. You don't have medication. You don't have a home if it's demolished. displacement, having to go to shelters, los tents, centro de refugio,
Or moving from one town.
relocation, having to
Right.
go somewhere else.
Se mudan de un pueblo hacia el otro.
Physical health consequences. I'm sure that Marisol's sister, who is receiving medical treatment for a medical condition, certainly not doing. It's not the intention to be in a car, and if you miss a dose, I don't know if you recall, it was a different kind of an issue when we had the government shutdown. But we had people who were not able to get their insulin. They were not able to get their medication, and some of them actually died. So you could have health consequences that are very severe.
Absolutely.
After the hurricanes, you had people that were not getting their medication and they were very sick. So if you are mobility impaired, you can't move somewhere. You're on chemotherapy or you're diabetes or God forbid you have to go for you have a chemo, and you're also going for dialysis. Can you imagine if you have dialysis like 3 times a week, 4 times a week, and the hospital is shut down, or you're not able to get there?
Yeah,
That's a death sentence.
We have the story of a doctor in the South, la doctora que hizo el hospital en una carpa. Her house was completely destroyed, but she continued practicing in a tent to serve primarily people with diabetes and hypertension. So she wanted to make sure that they were stabilized. And she continued practicing.
¿Pones el 10 ahora?
Sí.
Puede ponerlo. This is what we were just going over 10.
Yes.
We covered the aftermath, and beneath that we have the severe, the stage that's severe, where you have the prolonged aftermath, the marked depression, the marked health and emotional consequences over a period of time. I didn't mean to cut you off. You were.
I was talking about this particular doctor who has been recognized because ella la reconocieron porque ella ha dejado toda la destrucción de su casa para ayudar a la comunidad con lo que ella sabe mejor, que es la medicina. In the aftermath, then another thing that happens during the aftermath is that you do an assessment of, my God, what did I lose? Right? How much have I lost? You have to do an assessment of what is the level of the destruction of what belongs to you and what belongs, to the community. And then there's an assessment of the recovery. How much do I need to recover and go back to a baseline, right? And that involves financial resources.
It's like a needs assessment.
It's a needs assessment. And then where can I go to get those needs resolved or satisfied, right? What are the agencies in the government? And as we know, that also is a challenge in Puerto Rico. Las agencias que ayudan a las personas que están pasando por una situación como esta. Y usted sabe que ahora mismo las agencias gubernamentales en Puerto Rico también están un poquito como que no se puede contar mucho con ellas. Entonces eso aumenta ese nivel de ansiedad.
When you're not sure if the resources are actually there or they're going to be on time. There's a difference, when you need an ambulance, there's a big difference between the ambulance coming inside of 2 or 3 minutes and the ambulance taking 10 minutes.
Absolutely.
So these are some of the things. But realistically also with the hurricanes, the devastation was so severe that the ambulances couldn't go on the roads because the roads were washed away. So that's also reality. That's where you have to look at helicopters, other kinds of mobility, and that's where you need a strong leadership. You need a strong governmental leadership. FEMA here in the United States, you really need to have agencies that are there, Red Cross, that are there at a moment's notice and know what to do and have the resources to do it. When you see floods, there's boats going to homes. You don't have roads.
Yeah, but something interesting that happened this time around, una cosa que ocurrió ahora con los temblores que no ocurrió anteriormente, es que las comunidades se han unido. People from the north are coming in caravans to help the people in the south. They're not waiting for the government. They're saying, we can wait. We have to do it.
So is that a bit of a learning experience?
I think it's the resiliency. It's the resiliency that they say, you know what? We're not getting the help that we need from the government. Let's do it ourselves.
That's post-traumatic.
And they're calling. I know that some of my colleagues were getting together social workers and psychologists to go to the south. My sister is a nurse in Puerto Rico. She was going with her students to the south to provide support. And then you see the caravan trucks coming, troces y troces coming, viniendo from the north, which for me, it shows the resiliency of our people. They're saying, and as a result of that resiliency, that's how they found all this storage.
In that warehouse.
Warehouse, thank you, the word warehouse, yeah. That's where they found more than one warehouse with supplies that were not shared. But it was, again, people from the community that broke into those warehouses and said, look what we have here, that the government didn't do anything with it.
It's incredible. Let's look at slide 11. We're going to go over, this is just to give the viewers an idea of what some of the process is, just so you're aware of it. Crisis intervention. It's immediately on slide 11. It's immediately important to increase stabilization. You want to make sure that if the buildings are collapsing, you're removing people from them. You're looking for people underneath the debris. You want to stabilize. You want to do a triage assessment. Who's most seriously injured? You've got to work with them. Anything that's potentially life-threatening immediately now requires the most immediate attention. Crisis intervention assessment, biosocial and cultural assessment. What are the needs? I mean, you're dealing with people who have different cultures, different languages, different beliefs, different upbringings, and you have to have some awareness and also an awareness of what's available in the community resources that you can tap on. Assess the danger and safety for self and others. After 9/11, they were evacuating. I thought 9/11 wasn't handleable. It's like a lot of problems. They should have evacuated them. They should have evacuated both buildings, not one, and they should have set up a perimeter at least a mile. But at any rate, you're really talking about assessing danger and safety for others. So, a tu papi, la casa de tu papá todavía está allá.
Gracias a Dios, la del
Pero él salió, me imagino. Somebody was worried about him y lo sacaron. No lo dejaron allá.
No, están tratando de sacarlo y no quiere.
Se quiere quedar en su casa.
Toda la vida ahí, imagínense, está difícil.
You need to address the medical needs, and you have to identify signs of traumatic stress, what we're talking about.
I would like to add something here about the children, right? How to protect, what can we do with children to help them go through this crisis, the crisis that the family and the community is going through? We need to reduce the exposure as much as we can. So, for example, watching TV that tends to repeat over and over and over again and again. It's very important that we try not to have the children exposed to that, particularly because they see images and they might not understand. If they're little kids, they might not understand in the same way because developmentally they don't have the cognitive skills to understand what's going on as probably an adolescent. So it's up to us to protect them by controlling the access to it. That's why you see that the people come to entertain the children in the tents. Están viniendo personas y payasos para pasar un buen rato con los niños porque es importante que los niños sacarlos un poco de esa angustia que constantemente se está bombardeándolo a través de los medios televisivos.
Well, this is probably something that's also happening at the border with the children who've been removed.
That's right.
And they don't have their parents, and there's volunteers as well as professionals who are coming to try at least to do something to take their mind off of that, because otherwise the scarring that children have is something that can last a lifetime. Psychological treatment, which is also on slide 11. We're focusing on psychotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, relaxation training, biofeedback. There's many kinds of interventions that are appropriate. We've covered psychological treatments in the past, so I just did want to make a point that don't ignore it. Don't feel that you don't have to seek treatment. It can also be mental health counselors, psychiatrists, nurses, pastoral counselors. Seek help if it's necessary. Slide 12. We're wrapping up. Oscar's giving me the risk management sign. Not to come to an end. Identification, assessment, prioritization of various tasks, threat assessment, prepare, what's the response recovery, and identification of the risks. Often you're going to do this based on previous information, so like what you're seeing. It's a post-traumatic growth, resilience, so some of these things will help you with that. what worked, what didn't work. You want to improve safety measures, anticipate when risks may increase, and intervene quickly. I want to show slide 13. We're coming to an end, but we have 2 more slides, so bear with me. Slide 13. This is a slide that shows a white dove. Esto es la casa del hermano Teofilo de Marisol. It's Marisol's brother's, Teofilo, his house, a white dove perched on the roof of the house. The white dove symbolizes love, prosperity, peace, and hope. And this particular dove, si puede subirlo un poco, spent 2 hours on Teofilo's roof, and he told Marisol that he thought that they were looking at an angel, que era un ángel. And that's an example of the spirituality and the belief and how wonderful, and the faith and how wonderful it is. I wanted to look at the resources, slide 14, que estamos acabando with resources. These are some places that are available to you. I've mentioned before, New York State Psychological Association. I've given you their address, phone number, and a website. Many other states, every other state, APA has every state has an association that's part of the umbrella of the APA, American Psychological Association, which is the second one that I've mentioned under resource. So if you're in California, just type up California Psychological Association, New Jersey Psychological Association, and so forth. And you can find resources there and access to clinicians. And you get a lot of information on the APA. They have a wonderful wealth of resources of things to do in different traumas, tornadoes, hurricanes, and so forth.
Y aquí en Long Island está también la NOSA Psychological Association, right? And the Suffolk Psychological Association, que son más regionales, más cerca de ustedes.
We have also the ones below that. If you need to get information about the earthquake, I provided you a link there. If you wanted some information about the, again, earthquakes in Puerto Rico, and I've also provided the links to 2 wonderful, wonderful guides on the derrames, the mudslides in Puerto Rico. So it's actually 16 pages color, free. You can print them. They're there. It tells you what to do, and they give you a lot of coping strategies. So puedes sacar ya slide 14. I wanted very much to thank Dr. Dinelia Rosa.
Un placer.
Can I give you a hug?
Sure. Un placer. Muchas gracias por invitar.
It's okay to be huggy and to be affectionate.
Thank you for the invitation.
Marisol, tú me debes al menos un café, un cafecito, a coffee. Irma, over there, in mi Boricua wife over there. Maybe she'll be on the show one of these days.
That's right.
I wanted to thank the viewers. To me, my heart goes out to everybody in Puerto Rico who's suffering, and everybody who, for some reason, is affected by the impact of Puerto Rico, friends, family members, patients, and so forth. And I also want to reach out to the viewers who are suffering for any other reason, be it floods, be it tornadoes, hurricanes, be it devastation, be it loss of work, be it, whatever kinds of difficulties you are experiencing. I want to leave you with that image of that dove. There is hope. There's the resilience. There's a coming together. There's many people who are willing to help you. You can reach out to me. You know how to get a hold of me. I'm on the internet. My phone number, website. You can call me. You can contact several of these sources. Mostly, I really want you to take care of one another. Be good to each other. Sometimes you have a neighbor who can't get out of the house or is elderly. Go knock on the door. Make sure that they're okay. What Dinelia was saying about people from the north coming down to the south with the caravan, providing some sort of source. This is something we all can learn and do. We need to have a greater sense of community. There's always hope. There's always things that we can do. The show's being recorded. Gracias, Oscar. You did a wonderful job, except for that blackout. The show's it will be available tomorrow, as I mentioned, on Tribuna TV, Facebook, Vimeo. And the next show that I'll be doing is going to be covering hate crimes. hate crimes, which affects Hispanos and affects many Orthodox Jews and Jewish people who have been subjected to horrific acts of violence over the holidays, and affects many other cultures and people who are of some sort of a diversity. So we will be talking about violence and hate crimes and how to work with and intervene in those cases. So me despido de todos. Gracias a todos los televidentes. Say goodbye.
Buenas noches.
Despídete.
Bye.
Oscar, despídete.
Hasta el otro jueves.
Okay, good night, everybody. I really hope that the show's of interest and provide some source of benefit to you all. So buenas noches, queridos televidentes. Good night, my dear viewers.